Probably half my questions here are about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.
Well, I can answer those very quickly.
स्टॉक मार्केट रिलेटेड इंटरव्यू वीडियो पाने के लिए मेरे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन को दबा दें।
I think it's perfectly asinine to even pause to think about them. You know, it's one thing to think that gold has some marvelous store of value because man has no way of inventing more gold or getting it very easily. So it has the advantage of rarity. Believe me, man is capable of somehow creating more Bitcoin. They tell you they're not going to do it. They mean they're not going to do it unless they want to. That's what they mean when they say they're not going to do it. Yeah. If they tell you there are rules and they can't do it, don't believe them. When there's enough incentive, bad things will happen. It's bad people, crazy bubble, bad idea, luring people into the concept of easy wealth without much insider work. That's the last thing on earth you should think about. If it worked, it would be bad for you because you try and do it again. It's totally insane. And by the way, I've just laid out a wonderful life lesson for you. Give a whole lot of things a wide berth. They don't exist. You know, crooks, crazies, egomaniacs, people full of resentment, people full of self-pity, people who feel like victims. There's a whole lot of things that aren't going to work for you. Figure out what they are and then avoid them like the plague. And one of them is Bitcoin. And the worst thing would happen if you won because then you do it again. It's total insanity. And it's so easy to simplify life from just all these things are beneath you.
Yeah.
I don't even want to know. People are promoting Bitcoin. I don't want them to know my address.
So Charlie,
They're not my kind of people.
Charlie, what I hear you saying is you're not going to be investing in Bitcoin. That's fair?
I think you're fair.
So let me move to a similarly maybe controversial topic. I don't know if you read the news recently, but there's a lot of tax policy conversation going on, both here in California and nationally as well. What's your thought on where this ends up in terms of the tax policy?
I think we will get a tax bill. I think they will squeak it through and they'll make whatever adjustments they have to get the last few votes. I don't think it's a bit crazy to give this extra $2,000 a year to all those people who make $70,000 a year and have a lot of children. That strikes me as it's good politics and probably good policy. I also do not think it is crazy to reduce the corporate income tax on the C corporation. And if you look at the world, a lot of the places that have worked best, including Singapore and so forth, have that policy and may even have good macroeconomic consequences. And a lot of the people who are screaming about it and are so sure it won't work, they may not be right. It may actually work pretty well. It causes the capital values of the companies to come up. And there's a wealth effect from the increased market value of all the companies. Everybody recognizes there's an effect, but some people say it's small and some people say it's going to be large. And I'll tell you what they all have in common, none of them know. It is not totally inconceivable that it will work pretty well. And with so much of the world doing well with similar tax policy, and of course, the Democrats go berserk on this subject. But I think they're wrong. It may actually help them. Yeah, so I'm not sure it'll work. It may not, but it's not totally crazy.
Well, it reminds me of a piece of advice that you've offered and given to me, which is people often have a point of view, and the danger in having that point of view is you start to assume with certainty that you're right.
Absolutely. Totally crazy.
And I think what your point of view is you need to have a point of view.
Just a minute. Here's a very important subject I've been thinking about all my life. You asked for my opinion.
Yes.
I don't really know how well it's going to work. I don't think anybody else does either. I think it'll work to some extent, but how much I don't know. Now, is it unfair? Well, the corporations are by and large owned by a bunch of charitable endowments and by a bunch of pension plans, and the whole world is going into a world where they're trying to have the business interests of the company support their huge pension obligations that get bigger all the time. China is trying to do exactly what the Republicans are. China wants to have the main businesses in China owned more by the pension plans and the stocks to do well. I don't think China's crazy to have that. I don't think the Republicans are crazy either. It could work pretty well. And it's not just some evil thing that people are cooking up. It's a disagreement between people. And both sides who have violent hatreds and contempt for the other side, they're wrong. It's a disagreement on policy that ought to be civilized. When I see Congress on my television set and the degree of hatred they have, utter contempt, I mean, really serious, way more than is usual. Mm-hmm. It's evil to hate that much. It's a mistake to hate that much. That much hatred will turn. It's always been true. As anger comes in, reason leaves. It's a truism. So do you want to adopt a political point of view where you're angry all the time? If you do, welcome to the house of misery. And pretty low worldly achievement to boot. Yeah. So if that's what you want, you've just found out how to do it. Behave like those people you see on television.
Well, the other thing that's
in both parties, by the way.
Yeah. The other thing that's true, going back to one of your earlier comments, is the difference between a careerist mindset and a service or shareholder mindset, where in politics we have the emergence of a careerist mindset that is shaping how people behave because they're trying to survive.
Not only that, they have a group think. Just as the Moonies go crazy because they hang around together, so do our politicians.
Yeah.
And right. Do you want to go crazy? Is that what your ambition in life? You start with some advantage. Just make yourself a violently believing politician on either side. You'll turn your brain into cabbage. You only got one brain. Why would you want to turn it into cabbage?
So, Charlie, I've got a question here. What's the new amazing technology that you're most excited about?
Well, I tend to get not to get very excited about. I think that technology changes the world, and that reminds me of a thing. If I ask you what was the worst single mistake in the work of Adam Smith, I know I'd get I don't see everybody big eyes lighting up. The biggest mistake in the work of Adam Smith, he was totally right about markets and so on, and the advantages of trade, division of labor, and so forth. What he missed was how much the steady advance of technology would advance wealth and standards of living. He, in the 1700s, was living not too much differently from the way they lived in the Roman Empire, and he just missed it. And there, in fact, had been huge improvements in technology, but he just missed it. He wasn't very technically minded, and it was really stupid. And now I'll ask you a harder question. What was the worst mistake David Ricardo made? I'll bet the dean can't answer this question. I'm not going to ask you to try. I'll tell you the answer. David Ricardo he got the first order consequences of trade perfectly right. And it was not an obvious insight, and it was a great achievement. which is, but he didn't think about the second order consequences. He wasn't mathematical enough to see, and he wasn't mathematical to think what would happen when one country had way higher living standards than another. And he like Adam Smith, he missed. And the main issue in a place like the United States is if you have an advanced nation and some other nation which is numerous, but the people, if anything, are better on average than yours in terms of their innate quality, which I think is roughly true of China. And they're in poverty. They're living in caves, and they're caught in a Malthusian trap. And you got an advanced economy, and you suddenly go into free trade. What is going to happen is, Ricardo proved it, both sides are going to live better, right? But the people here that are assimilating all the great economies of the world in China, they're going to go up way faster. So you go up 2% a year, and they go up 12%. And pretty soon they're the dominant nation in the world, and you aren't. Well, are you really better off? Well, the answer is no, and Ricardo never figured out any of that stuff. So I'm telling you that so that you can fix your inadequate knowledge of Ricardo. But one of the interesting problems of that is you can't understand Ricardo properly in thinking about the United States vis-a-vis free trade with China without thinking about the tragedy of the commons. Because if we had the only nation in the world, except for China, we could say we won't trade with them, we'll just leave them in their damned agricultural poverty, and we'll just, and we could probably have done that. But the whole rest of the world will trade with. They're going to rise anyway. So we don't have any power to hold back the rise of China by not trading with them. So we had to do what we did. And once you do that, now they're going to be a greater power than we are. And the two of us are going to be big enough so we can accomplish pretty nearly anything we both want to do. So we have to be friendly with China. So you can imagine how I like Donald Trump complaining about the Chinese. It's really stupid. It's a compulsory friendship. It's a compulsory friendship. You'd be out of your mind to do anything else. Why wouldn't you want to have an intimate, friendly relationship with the biggest other power in the whole damn world?
Yeah.
Particularly when they got a bunch of atom bombs. It's just nutty. We have no alternative but to do this. And when that happens, you're going to get a certain amount of misery at the people who are competing with the Chinese as they rise from poverty, with trade and so forth. That was inevitable. It's not the fault of a bunch of evil Republicans who don't love the poor. Yeah. That is just total balderdash. It just happened. And we didn't have all these choices.
So Charlie, in wrapping up, we've got, roughly 250, 300 people in the room tonight. And many of them looking at their futures, their careers, with many decades ahead of them.
I wish I had many decades ahead. I'd trade some large numbers if I could just buy some life expectancy.
What, as you look back on your life experience, what's the most important piece of advice that you would offer everyone in the room tonight as they look forward into their futures? Well,
there are a few obvious ones. They're all ancient. Ben Franklin, marriage is like the most important decision you have, not your business career. It'll do more for you, good or bad, than anything else. And Ben Franklin had the best advice ever given on marriage. He said, keep your eyes wide open before marriage and half shut thereafter. It's amazing how if you just get up every morning and keep plugging and have some discipline and keep learning, and it's amazing how it works out okay. And I don't think it's wise to have an ambition to be president of the United States or a billionaire or something like that, because the odds are too much against you. much better to aim low. I did not intend to get rich. I wanted to get independent. I just overshot. And and by the way, while you're clapping, some of the overshooting was accidental. There's a big, you can be very deserving and very intelligent and very disciplined, but there's also a factor of luck that comes into this thing. And the people who get the outcomes that seem extraordinary, they're the people who have discipline and intelligence and good virtue, plus a hell of a lot of luck. Why wouldn't the world work like that? So you shouldn't give credit for the unusual. A lot of the people, a friend of mine said about a colleague of his in his fraternity, he says, old George was a duck sitting on a pond and they raised the level of the pond. There are a lot of people that just luck into the right place and rise, and there are a lot of very eminent people who have many advantages, and they've got one little flaw or one bit of bad luck, and they're mired in misery all their lives. But that makes it interesting to have all this variation.
Well, Charlie, on behalf of everyone here, thank you. Your wisdom. I often say, as an educational institution, we not only can provide people with knowledge, but the most important thing we can do is give them wisdom and judgment. And your comments, I know for me, and I expect for everyone in this room tonight, have added to our wisdom and our judgment, and also inspiring at the same time. Thank you very much.